Hello YouTube, this is Ithikial in Combat Mission Battle for Normandy, and it is the first video of the new version of the channel where it's going to become more of a scenario editing, map making channel. And your little pixel trooping you're looking at is a battalion commander which some of you hopefully in the future will get to know very well. This little video is about the project that I hinted at in my last video, that it should be released around the same time as this one, and that one is a little trial operation, so to speak, for La Carillion strong point, which was a key strong point that held up the 12th, sorry, let me get my Roman numerals there right, 19th Corps for a few days in mid-July 1944, just north of St. Lo. So basically it was a reinforced American battalion that came up against a Kampf group of roughly a battalion in size from the Germans. A Kampf group Kinter from memory is the name. And basically, as you can see as I scrolled up before, it's closely in hedgerows and lots of cover and concealment, and you got to go uphill. So this is the map so far. It is incomplete, but this video I want to really explain what I'm trying to do with this. It is a sort of a very different idea. So anyway, I won't focus too much on the map just yet. I'll leave that for future videos, but basically what I am trying to do with this one is to recreate the old combat mission operations as best that they could be done in the new engine, or the newer engine I should say now. For those who weren't around in the very old days of the combat mission Beyond Overlord, Battle Barbarossa to Berlin, and Afrika Korps, instead of campaigns as we know and love now, they had operations which were basically a progressive movement across the same map by your force, and you would basically take charge of the battle every few hours, or I think the scenario designer could actually determine the length between battles, and your force would take casualties, go back and regroup, get a bit of replenishment, and then keep trying to push forward towards the end objective. One of my greatest combat mission experiences to this day was actually way back in Beyond Overlord, which was the Road to Carentan, I think it was, no, just Carentan operation, which is very, very large, and it followed the 502nd's progression down the highway to the outskirts of Carentan. Didn't actually look at the actual taking of Carentan, but yeah, you actually controlled a sizable force, a little bit historically inaccurate from memory, but a sizable force as it tried to progress through hedgerows and small hamlets and the swamplands. Anyway, it is sort of known now that the operations, they certainly had their flaws. It wasn't a perfect system, but it's sort of been intimated that they weren't very popular. Then there's a whole bunch of people that jump up and down. I must have been on one of them. That really liked the idea. So basically, even though the campaign system that's built into combat mission isn't really designed to do that, I think there's a way we can sort of get halfway there with the tools we've got available, and that's what I'm trying to do in this campaign battle. Will be in effect one giant engagement spanning a few days. So first things first, the player will see the entire map all the time. The end goal is basically to get your American forces, which would be like their muster point, and you need to break through the German lines and secure the back line essentially. I'm thinking objectives here, here and here. So if you take all three, it sort of signifies you've got to the end, you've broken the main line of resistance, and follow-on forces can then take over and your job is done. But between you and there is obviously not exactly a whole lot of distance compared to some maps we play on, but there is a whole battalion of dug-in Germans with fortifications and off-map support. So basically, yeah, it's not going to be an easy pickings. A lot of some would say just make it as just a big scenario and leave it at that. I think that does encourage ahistorical play a bit. I'm not saying it's wargaming. I know I'm not trying. It's meant to be fun. I know that, but it does let you take enormous risks with troops, and you could take the objective on that back line. But most people do it with 50, 60% casualties overall, and that just isn't feasible in real life. If a battalion took 20% casualties in one engagement, I think the battalion commander would be sacked or looked at very, very closely for future command. But of course, players don't really have to worry about real lives. They worry about pixel trooping lives, which are incredibly cheap. So they do generally just push, and don't really worry about the consequences as much. I want to sort of possibly change that. So basically, yeah, that's sort of my thinking here. So there may be intermediate goals, but basically try and get your forces to slowly progress and push up. The easier side of that is basically like replenishment and resupply. I've always sort of got those ready to go. I think I know I'm going to do that. Replenishment of headcount will occur through the regular campaign system, be very, very low between engagements, but there will be a constant replenishment, like 10%, maybe 20% overnight. But basically, that's the easy bit. That represents the guys getting patched up by their company medics on the field between engagements in the lulls and the fighting, and also the repel-depel effect, replacement depots which were used quite extensively in the blockage fighting. And if you read any books about St. Lo, you can the Americans really realised some of the flaws in the repel-depel system, or the nickname they gave it was repel-depel, because of the constant flow through of troops that couldn't gain valuable experience with a core group that they followed through. Sort of like Band of Brothers in the Airborne Company that it followed. They got that core group that goes through. That was great and very lucky, but for the regular infantry, it wasn't exactly always like that. Some companies I read, just again researching for this, not necessarily this engagement, this advance towards St. Lo, some companies got down to like 23 men, and only, I think it was, it was 23 men, and like 6 of them had landed at D-Day out of a starting strength of over 250. So there wasn't that there was camaraderie, of course, but there wasn't that experience of fighting with the same guys by your side all the time. To make it a bit more difficult for the American player in this campaign/operation is that the forces will not be veterans. The 35th Infantry Division had only landed a few days before this, and though they had fought to get to this point, it wasn't as heavy as they experienced from this point onwards into St. Lo. So the troops would be a mix of green and regular. I'll get to unit choices and that well down the track in another video, that is. So anyway, so that's I've got that idea in play in terms of ammunition resupply. I think you can do that now with the supply. You purchase supply units in the editor, which generates a whole bunch of crates that on the map, and basically the player can then draw from those giant pools of small arms and I think it's got mortars and bazooka rounds and that. Depending on how you do it. So rather than having a replenishment automatically between battles, basically the player has to really decide which of my companies are going to retreat, have a bit of a break this time to maybe boost up their numbers, and at the same time, go back to this muster area and actually organise their ammunition and make sure it's all sorted. That could take a little bit of balancing, I admit, but that could also open up some more opportunities to really show that as a battalion commander, you've got to manage multiple units in the field and control it. You can't just throw everything forward at one time. I mean, the British and the Canadians, or the Commonwealth forces, obviously they tried to always do the two companies up front, 2 companies in the back, wherever they could, or maybe 3 up front, 1 in the back. They never went forward, or never really wanted to go forward and put all 4 companies of a battalion in the line at once, at least not in the front line. So yeah, try and get that sort of system flowing. The other option is to use a bit more of a narrative. There's no real blow-by-blow, hour-by-hour account of this engagement, so I'm not sort of locked into history here, and I don't want to be. So I may throw in some choices where they're little mini scenarios that you basically pick left or right, and or yes and no, and that determines what happens. So I may say, give you a choice that divisions come down and said, if you attack now, we can give you support with a rocket battery or something very, very big. Do you want to go in now? But then you got to assess. Oh, hang on, but my forces got beat up last mission. I really need to let them sit back for a few engagements. Maybe just take pot shots at the enemy and let them slowly replenish their forces over the afternoon. So that's what I'm trying to get at with this approach. It is very experimental, and I don't think anyone else has tried this. And if they have, let me know, and let me know if I'm wasting my time. So yeah, that's the idea I'm going for. There was something else I was going to mention. Yeah, maybe why this? I mean, as I said in the other video, I had this map sort of half done already, and worked on it a little bit over Christmas. But basically, the map, I didn't have to worry about finding a map, making sure it's to the right scale and all that. It was already all done for me thanks to Osprey Publishing and their St. Lo book of all books. So yeah, that saved a lot of time years ago, and then I rediscovered it. So I thought, I've been meaning to try this. I did think of maybe doing this on a Carentan map, but that would be very, very large. And as a first attempt at trying this system, this doesn't even exist yet, I admit, on something that big, could have ended in heartbreak. So basically, yeah, that's the general idea. So I think I'll leave it here for this video. Sorry, it's not really action-packed, and they won't be for quite some time, but basically that is the broad overview I'm trying with this type of scenario. The other thing, the big caveat, sorry, that's what I meant to mention. The big caveat here, one thing that's going to really break the immersion with this approach, and that is, quite simply, battle states of a map can't transfer to the next engagement. They could back in Barbarossa to Berlin and Africa Corps. That was introduced, I believe, in those two titles, and I loved it. I love that feature, and it is on the run, right at the top of my wish list for a future engine upgrade for this combat mission engine. If we get a miracle with version 5, whenever that's going to be worked on, I'll be clapping and singing in the streets. But at the moment, we can't, or I can't really do that. So that also makes it very difficult when you're choosing heavy artillery, or how much heavy artillery do I want to give the player, because quite simply you may completely bombard this, let's say this little farm and barn complex over here to really kick the Germans out and make your life easier, but then you rock up the next engagement and it's all magically rebuilt. Those Normandy farmers are really, really productive. That also brings up another case, like for maybe using Rhino attachments on Shermans, which actually doesn't really get used a lot as much as I thought they would in Battle for Normandy, in these scenarios I've played at least. But basically, yeah, you knock over hedges or blow hedges with your engineers and you move on through, and then they've grown back, literally in the space of an hour or so. So it gets that's always going to be a problem. But I think it's not too bad. I mean, the Germans will obviously get their own heavy artillery and support, and wherever I program the German AI to actually bombard, I can at least get that, get the let's say the Germans bomb this, I can at least go in and say all engagement after this one, have this damage map state in this area with a whole bunch of craters and maybe some damaged roofs and that, to at least represent the same thing. So yeah, still a lot of map work to do. It looks pretty finished, I know, but it's not as soon as you get down to anywhere near the buildings and that, so it's really not. But yeah, basically that is the plan. So let me know below in the comments, and also I think I may post this in the forums, but let me know of the idea, what you think of it, and see if it's a really good experiment to continue with. Any tips and tricks to try and make it better, much appreciated. This is highly experimental. This is from an old combat mission player from 1999 that really misses operations. Maybe I'm the only one, but let's see over the course of the next year. Thanks for watching, everybody. I will see you all again very soon.